In this method, we're going to learn how to find the greatest common factor and the least common multiple using what I like to call the cake method. So we have two vocabulary here. The first is greatest common factor, and that would be the biggest number, that's where the greatest come from, the biggest number that is a factor of both of two other numbers. So I called them x and y. So you have two numbers, and it's the biggest number that goes in evenly to both of them. The least common multiple is the opposite. So this is the smallest number that is a multiple of both of two numbers. So, for example, the greatest common factor of 12 and 18 would be 6, because that's the biggest number that goes in evenly to both 12 and 6. And the least common multiple of 10 and 15 would be 30, because that's the smallest number that both 10 and 15 go into evenly. So sometimes it's easy to find the greatest common factor or the least common multiple just by writing out some numbers or doing it in your head. But when you start dealing with bigger numbers, it can be nice to have a good method. So the cake method is called that because it sort of looks like a upside down wedding cake when you're finished. And if you can picture that the other way around, that would be like a little cake. Some people call it a chandelier because it looks like a chandelier. So we're going to do this for 12 and 44. So you start by writing 12 and 44 next to each other on the page, and you make an L next to them. And then you think, what is the biggest, or what is a number that goes into both of them? It doesn't have to be the biggest, but just any number that goes in evenly to both. Often that first number is a 2. If they're both odd, that won't work and you'll have to think of something else. But for now, we'll do a 2. So we're going to say that 2 goes into both 12 and 44 evenly. And then the next step is to do that division. So 12 divided by 2 gives you 6. And you put the 6 underneath. And 44 divided by 2 gives you 22. And you put the 22 underneath there. Then you draw another L like that. You can see where the cake's coming from. And you do it again. What's a number that goes into both 6 and 22? Well, I see 2 again, which leaves me with 3 and an 11. So just to recap, we found a number that went into both, we divided, and then we repeated until we got no more common factors. And I know that there's no more common factors because 3 and 11, they're both prime, and the smallest number to go into both is 1, which I guess technically is a common factor. It's just not really a helpful one. So now, how did this help us find the greatest common factor? So if we look on the side, those factors, the numbers that went in, there was a 2 and a 2. So the GCF is going to be 2 times 2. We just have to multiply those numbers on the side. And that gives us 4. To find the least common multiple, that one, we're going to multiply all the numbers on the outside. You can see how that kind of makes an L as you do it. So the least common multiple is going to be 2 times 2 times 3 times 11. And that gives us 132. So the GCF for these numbers is 4 and the LCM is 132. All right, so now you're going to pause the video and you're going to try this yourself for the numbers 30 and 12. You're going to use the cake method to find the GCF and the LCM of 30 and 12. Pause now. All right, so the first number that I saw here was actually a 3, because I know 3 goes into 30 10 times, and 3 goes into 12 4 times. And now these ones must still have a common factor because they're both even. So I'm going to divide by 2, and that'll give me 5 and 2. 5 and 2 don't have any useful common factors, so that tells me that I'm done with the cake. Now I just get to calculate. So the GCF, the greatest common factor, that's going to be the 3 times 2. That's the sides. So that's 6. And then the LCM is going to be the 3 times 2 times 5 times 2, which will give us 60. So the GCF is 6 and the LCM is 60. All right, so now our practice problem. So you're going to use the cake method to find the GCF and LCM of 50 and 20. We'll correct this in class tomorrow.